I promise this is the final presentation. I want to welcome back Vikram Kalkat from our ARC Middle East office. Vikram's been pretty active. In order to pay for his trip, we made him work very hard. He hosted a session. He was on the ARC booth. Now he's giving a presentation. So before flying back in a couple of days. So Vikram, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Bob. I think I'm between the drinks and everything, so I will make it very quick. Folks, thanks a lot to be here. So a few months back, I was contacted by some folks who were very interested to know what's happening in OT world, in AI world. Further conversations with them led to something quite interesting. And what was interesting was the fact that this is an organization, a refinery, which was made up of a lot of very interesting people. They had been going through lots and lots of consulting reports. They were doing a lot of work in terms of how do you be better. So remember, just like all of us, they've been attending a lot of sessions. They're going through a lot of details. And they were really aware of what's going on everywhere. They're attending all the AI sessions, they're attending OT sessions, cybersecurity issues, so forth. So from that perspective, they cover everything. And yet what's happening is the effectiveness, the efficiency, or the results of the organizations aren't showing up. And when those aren't showing up, then you start to wonder, what is the point of hiring consultants? What's the point of going for products? And what's the point of doing those things? So the resulting place for us to start was, when they came to us, was, what is the problem statement? And when we looked at a few different things, we said, well, possibly what you want to do is a maturity assessment. And that's where you're going to start with. Once you know where your maturity is, we can take it forward. So we started with the project with the automation department in this instance. And it doesn't matter. In your instance, it could be another organization. You pick up one of those which is in the heart of the organization and take it from there. When we picked up the automation department, we started to see how is it that they are set up, what is it we can do. And for us, one of the main things was the maturity level assessment, the strategic roadmap, and a strategic presentation around what they can change. Looks very standard, looks very consulting, doesn't look much different. But the difference will start very soon. The difference starts from when you look at the project scope, you are looking at seeing, okay, what exactly are they going to do? How do you compress the project scope to something very, very accurate? And when you look at all that and more, you realize, how do you bring in things such as architecture? How do you bring in the scope and ownership? How do you bring in end results into it? And for that, what becomes very important is, in this instance, we brought in a few research analysts who had consulting experience and a deep consulting experience. Now, the difference generally is, folks generally start, when they have to start an AI project, is look for IT specialists or look for an AI specialist. But in this instance, what we were looking for was people who were with research analyst backgrounds or people who were in our organization who actually understood the product itself. Because where is the product? How do you measure that maturity? And how are we going to link that maturity to how we take things forward? So that's how we selected the team. It was myself and 4 analysts. You see here a team of folks who came in from the US for this project. We worked remotely in some instances. We went to the site and we did, I think, over 2-3 weeks, about 40 to 50 different interviews. The difference went further. We spoke about things such as people, process, and technology. In this instance, when we were supposed to measure them, we took process, we took technology, but we broke the people part into 4 different sections. So instead of people being just people, we says we want to measure much more deeply about people being, what's the corporate culture, what's the organization, what's the collaboration, what's the skills of the people. And when you start to do all that and more, what you're doing is you're giving a lot more measurement points to the people aspect of things. We heard earlier on about the first principles of AI. We also heard about the product perspective. And we also heard about the human element. And that's what I want to emphasize on, is when we were doing this consulting project, what happened was we said, can we make the people part a lot more expansive? And that happens when you start to measure them, is you measure them in a lot more detail on the people part. And this is where the results became interesting, because when you start to ask more and more questions around the people part, in every section, cybersecurity, you could go into automation details or other aspects of it, all that and more. As you go on the people part, you will see a lot more gaps there. And the gaps can be the organizations aren't all in silos, or even if they're talking, that's very limited. They are doing pilot projects. I mean, in this instance, I was very amazed. They were very, very sophisticated. The pilot projects, the data lakes, everything and more was there. They knew everything on the tools, but it wasn't there. The lacking part happened to be the culture. Everybody's trying to do something. The measurement is simply, if you are doing, that's good. But the measurement of collaboration had to be a lot more. That and more is very important on this change management piece. And as we heard about the AI piece earlier, the transformation piece, that how are you going to measure all that and more is possibly what's going to make the difference between a successful AI project versus something that just may not cross the pilot phase. These are some of the samples. The other difference that we made in this project was we didn't try to measure them as being what is the maximum best they can do. We instead went about saying where you are right now versus where is the industry right now that we can benchmark against. And when we start to benchmark, it's not necessary that you got to be number one on everything as the best. You can also be just about good. And that's good enough for some of these things, because that's what the industry benchmark is. In some instances, you have to do a lot more. So it's those kind of differences, which is a difference which is made by experienced people that you will bring to the table to do these research, and not only people who know the expertise on the tools or the IT part or anything related to what's happening in theory. So that's a huge difference, you see. They were already trying a lot of things. They had the AI scientists on the ground. They knew all the tools. They were buying the things. But what they were trying to do was leapfrog into human problem statements with these things. And that doesn't always happen. So from ARC perspective, we were benchmarking a lot of the companies and so forth. So we were able to help them on this and more. And that was very interesting because the benchmarking exercise helped them a lot, and also in terms of the savings. So one of the key observations I'd like to take forward here is organization. In this instance, we said the core business needs to focus on organization change and not on technology. And which comes up a lot of times, that is, the technology can help you. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't invest. Absolutely, you should. But it doesn't mean that you should invest thinking that you can leapfrog away from the changes you want to make in the organization, because the breakout will happen. Because once your consultants go, once your reports go, once your pilot projects go, you may not see that benefit. So that's important. The other piece was accountability. It still remains. If you are a CFO, you are accountable for the financials. If you are responsible for the automation organization, you are responsible for the automation. It doesn't mean cybersecurity can be harnessed by someone from the IT department or so forth. So you have to go for those training sessions. If not you, then someone in your department has to be. So again, how you are measuring your people in how many different categories is going to determine a lot in terms of how well you can harvest the AI tool. You can easily overspend on technology. In this instance, they were doing that, but in a lot of instances, I'm sure there can be a lot of other challenges people can see, but these are some of the ways you can measure yourself. And a lot of this gets measured when you're going deeper into those conversations, much beyond the expectation of a project. As I said, we did about 40 interviews, even though we were just supposed to work with about 5 or 6 people. We went across the entire organization. So as you expand across the organization, you will begin to see a lot of those dots. And it's about the whole ecosystem and how you're measuring your people. That will always count. So here were some of the recommendations we gave. It says you got to measure yourself, analyze and improve. A lot of those things look standard, but a lot of those things are about the hard work, about going deeper into what makes that organization tick. Last but not the least, automation, we have a lot of ways you can measure it, but again, these are all measurements. In the end, it's about what you want to do. The organization in this instance was very satisfied because for the first time, they could execute on a report. They could see what the organization is possible. And they could also say, well, maybe we don't need all the tools. We're good to have things, and we can do a lot more research and link the AI to measurable activities for ROI. They may not achieve them all right now, but I think they're on path of doing things. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there.